There is an object within arm's reach of you right now. You've used it thousands of times. You've lost it, stolen it from hotel rooms, chewed on it out of boredom, and never once given it a second thought. It costs almost nothing. You can buy 30 of them for a few dollars. And yet, inside that cheap plastic tube is a piece of engineering so precise, so technically demanding, that the balls inside them are polished using machines tipped with actual diamonds. And if even one defect is found on a single ball bearing, thousands of others made in the same batch are destroyed. That object? The ordinary ballpoint pen. And the story of how it went from a revolutionary luxury worth more than a week's wage to something banks give away for free is one of the most wild, dramatic, and genuinely fascinating stories in the history of human invention. Let's start with what's actually inside the pen you've been ignoring your whole life. Because the engineering is extraordinary. The ballpoint pen works through one of the most elegant mechanisms ever designed. At the tip sits a tiny metal ball. In the case of the world's most famous ballpoint, the BIC, that ball is made from tungsten carbide, the same material used in armor-piercing bullets. After the ball is shaped, it's polished in a machine fitted with diamond-tipped components. The precision required is almost absurd. The space between the ball and its socket must be accurate to within 1,000th of a centimeter. Not a millimeter, 1,000th of a centimeter. The reason for this insane level of precision is the ink delivery system itself. Gravity pulls the ink down onto the spinning ball, which transfers it to the page as you write. But the ball also creates a pressurized seal, preventing excess ink from escaping or drying out. This is why a single ballpoint pen can write roughly 100,000 words before running out, roughly the length of an entire novel. The system works brilliantly on Earth. In space, however, with no gravity to pull the ink downward, the whole thing falls apart. Which brings us to the most famous myth in science history. You've probably heard this story. NASA spent millions, sometimes people say billions, of taxpayer dollars developing a pen that could write in space, while the clever Soviets simply handed their cosmonauts a pencil. It's a perfect story. It's also almost completely false. Here's what actually happened. Both NASA and the Soviet cosmonauts initially did use pencils in space, and it quickly became a disaster. Pencils break, and in zero gravity, those tiny splinters of wood and graphite float freely around the spacecraft, into eyes, into equipment, and near electrical components where they could potentially start a fire. Pencils were dangerous. Something else was needed. But here's the key part of the myth that collapses under scrutiny. Neither NASA nor the Soviets invested a single dollar in developing a space pen. What NASA did waste money on was specially designed pencils, paying the jaw-dropping sum of $128.96 per pencil from a company called Overengineering, or about $438 each in today's money. The public was furious. But the space pen? That was funded entirely by one private individual. His name was Paul C. Fisher, founder of the Fisher Pen Company. Using over $1 million of his own personal money, Fisher developed a pen that used pressurized nitrogen at 35 psi to force out a specialized gel-like ink he formulated himself. The result, the AG-7 Fisher Space Pen, could write upside down, underwater, in temperatures ranging from -50 degrees Fahrenheit to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and yes, in the vacuum of space. When Fisher brought it to NASA, they tested it thoroughly and bought 400 of them. Not at the contractor price of $128 per pencil. Fisher sold them at a bulk discount of $2.39 each, around 40% off the regular consumer price of $3.98. By 1969, even the Soviet Union was buying them for their cosmonauts. Versions of the Fisher Space Pen are still sold today. The man who actually solved the problem spent his own money, sold his solution at a discount, and let NASA and the Soviets take the glory. Not a bad advertisement, though. Now let's go back to where the ballpoint pen itself actually came from, because the inventor's story is one of the most underappreciated in history. In 1931, a Hungarian newspaper editor named Laszlo Biro noticed something simple while watching a printing press. The ink used in newspapers dried almost instantly and never smudged. He was sick of fountain pens, their constant smearing, their need for external ink, their habit of leaking at high altitudes. He wondered, what if a pen could use ink like this? Working with his chemist brother Georgi, Biro spent years perfecting a thick, paste-like ink that would flow smoothly but dry near instantly. On June 15, 1938, he patented the first commercially viable ballpoint pen. The design wasn't entirely new. An American leather tanner named John J. Loud had patented a near-identical device back in 1888 for marking leather. But Loud's design never worked well enough on paper. He lost interest, never renewed the patent, and the invention died with him. Biro cracked the formula where Loud couldn't. His pens were expensive, ludicrously so by today's standards, but they were revolutionary. The British Royal Air Force in particular loved them because unlike fountain pens, which leaked and failed at high altitude, Biro's pens worked perfectly at 30,000 feet. The RAF put in orders. Word spread. The ballpoint pen was a product the world needed. There was just one problem. Almost nobody could afford it. Enter Marcel Bitch. A French manufacturer, Bitch saw what Biro had built and understood something crucial. The invention was perfect, but the business model was broken. Ballpoint pens were still selling for the equivalent of a week's wages. If someone could mass-produce them at a fraction of the cost while maintaining quality, they would own the world. Bitch saved his money, bought a rundown factory in France, purchased the rights to Biro's patent, and set about building one of the greatest manufacturing operations in history. He didn't just copy the pen, he perfected the production process. By making millions upon millions of pens, he was able to undercut every competitor and sell ballpoints at 1/13 of the then normal price. And here is the remarkable part. His mass-produced pens were not just cheaper. Due to his obsessive quality control and mass production, they were also better, more reliable, consistent. His 1960s advertising slogan, "Writes the first time, every time," wasn't just a tagline. It was a fact, and it was devastating to every competitor. He named the company BIC, a shortened version of his own surname, and the BIC Cristal became the most popular pen ever made. One model from one brand alone sells at a rate of 57 every second and had racked up sales of 100 billion by 2006. That's not all pens combined. That is one model, one pen, 100 billion sold. New Atlas. Laszlo Biro, who had sold his patent rights and never became truly wealthy from his invention, reportedly said later, "I often think that with a little more business acumen I could have made a huge fortune, but I harbor no grudges." The Biro has become the most popular writing instrument in the world, and that thought makes me forget the riches I missed out on. So the next time you pick up a ballpoint pen, from a bank counter, from the bottom of a bag, from someone's desk without asking and definitely without returning it, take 1 second to appreciate what you're holding. A diamond-polished, tungsten carbide-tipped, gravity-defying engineering marvel that went to the moon, survived wars, and conquered Earth. It took a leather tanner in 1888, a frustrated newspaper editor in 1938, a private inventor with $1 million and a dream, and a French factory owner with an obsession for mass production to give you something you'll lose before the end of the week. And that somehow makes it even more extraordinary. If you enjoyed this one, hit subscribe. There are plenty more stories like this waiting for you.